visual mods have absolutely transformed Kerbal Space Program. They turned a game from 2011 that looks like this, and turned it into this. It's incredible, but sometimes it can be really hard to stay up to date and keep track of all the mods you need to keep KSP looking as pristine as possible. Beyond that, if you go online and look for mod packs or guides, a lot of people tend to just suggest the absolute top-of-the-line mods that, unfortunately, while they look amazing, are really only the best option if you have a super powerful computer. Otherwise, you're going to get lag, crazy loading times, or even crashes. Before you worry about any of that, the most important thing you need to do is to install the foundational visual mod for KSP, that being Environmental Visual Enhancements. The easiest way to download not only this mod, almost every mod we'll be discussing today is through CCAN. If you don't have it or don't know how to use it, there are plenty of online tutorials you can check out. Don't worry, it's super simple. At this point, if you are using CCAN, you'll be prompted to choose which config you'd like to install. This is probably a good time for me to bring up BlackRack's Volumetric clouds, which is that super popular mod you see in almost every KSP video that adds these incredible looking 3D clouds and other atmospheric effects. The one catch, however, is that this mod is paywalled behind BlackRack's Patreon. Subscribing costs $6.50 a month, and it's totally up to you whether or not you think it's worth it. There is a super easy install tutorial provided in the Patreon if that's the option you choose. It's important to note, though, that this mod can be really intensive from a performance perspective. On my machine, there is a notable difference in FPS depending on whether I'm looking at the clouds or not. So even if you're willing to pay the money, it might be worth stopping and making sure your computer can actually handle it. On the other hand, if you decide you're going to stick with the free stuff, you're essentially going to have to choose one of these configs. A lot of them are for planet packs or other mods, so you can ignore those. Really, the two most important ones are Astronomers Visual Pack and Spectra. Before I got Volumetric Clouds, I was a happy user of Astronomers for many years. It's been around forever and, in my opinion, is a super solid option for most people. However, if you have a really performance-limited machine, like a laptop for example, you might want to consider using Spectra instead. It's highly optimized for performance and looks probably 85% as good as Astronomers. So with that, our game has now gone from looking like this to this. Already a major improvement, but there's still a lot more we can do. By the way, if you are enjoying the video, you might want to consider joining my Discord using the link in the description. I've been trying to get a few more people back in there and kind of bring it back to life. Anyway, with the clouds out of the way, let's move on to the shaders. The three mods you're going to want to get are Scatterer, Deferred Rendering, and TUFX. I'd say Scatterer is an incredibly close second to Eve in terms of foundational KSP visual mods. It does basically what the name suggests and adds atmospheric scattering effects, but also greatly improves the water shaders as well. If you're installing through CCAN, you'll get that same menu pop up asking you to choose a config. Personally, the standard Sunflare one works fine and is probably the best option for most people. There is a Spectra version, so if you're using that for your clouds, you might want to consider using it for Scatterer as well. Next up is Deferred Rendering. This is a relatively new mod that, through some magic I don't really understand, adds this really cool shine effect to the entire game. It gives parts a lot more definition, makes them feel a lot less flat, and overall just makes the lighting way better. I'd also highly recommend downloading TUFX as a complement. It allows you to select different shader presets to customize how these mods make your game look. I haven't experimented too much with this because I usually just stick to using BlackRack's profile, which I'd suggest you do as well. Now that we have our shaders set up, let's get the ground looking a bit better. For this, we're going to be using a mod called Parallax. This mod fills in the empty space on your bodies by adding a ton of surface objects. On Kerbin, this is mostly trees, grass, bushes, rocks, and usually just vegetation. But on some of the other planets, things can get a little more exotic. While Parallax is a very, very cool mod, it also really likes to lag your game. For that reason, I actually don't even use Parallax on my install. Combining volumetric clouds with Parallax is just too much to ask for my old 1080 Ti. If you have a newer GPU, you can probably run both just fine. It's just something to pay attention to if you're on a little slower hardware. You might also just want to be aware of the size of this mod. Parallax install can get up to around 5 gigabytes in size, so if you're running low on storage on your machine, you might just want to take note of that. The last really big mod I want to talk about is ReStock. Now, this is a bit of a controversial one in my view. So what ReStock does is it gives almost all of your stock parts brand new and better textures, basically like a texture pack in Minecraft. There can be mod conflict, so I'd be careful installing this if your game already has a ton of mods in it, but that's not the reason I'm calling it controversial. So, I've been playing KSP for about 10 years now, ever since I was in middle school, and I've been using stock parts that entire time, and now there's just a certain charm to them for me. I fully acknowledge the ReStock textures are better, and I am considering finally switching over, but I don't know. I just have gotten too attached to the stock parts for some reason. I'm sure some of the more experienced players watching this will understand what I'm saying, but if you're new to the game, it's probably worth checking out. I would issue a warning though if you plan on using ReStock with really huge craft, as I've heard there's some weird differences with drag profiles, and it is just inherently more laggy than the stock parts. Another mod you shouldn't use with large craft is Waterfall. This mod replaces the default engine plumes in KSP and is a massive upgrade to any burn. There is a specific ReStock profile for Waterfall, so if you're going to want to install that if you're using that mod. Otherwise, just stick with the stock effects. Like I said though, this thing does not do well with big vehicles, or to be specific, ones with a lot of engines. Basically, the more engines you have, the laggier your game will be. If you only have a few firing at a time, even a really weak computer should do just fine. If you're doing what I used to do and trying to launch rockets with literally hundreds of engines running at a time, stay far, far away from Waterfall. Okay, now let's take a quick break from the really big ones and go through a bit of a rapid fire round for some of the simpler or more niche mods. Ready? Here we go! First up, we got Distant Object Enhancement, which pretty much does what the name suggests. Planet Shine is next, which improves planet shaders and adds their reflections onto your spacecraft. I'd recommend using the default config for this one. After that, you can get Vapor Cones, which is this nice little mod that adds these cool arrow effects. Last but not least, if you want these awesome cinematic looking reentries, go ahead and get a mod called Firefly. Alright, after you've gotten all that done, we can now have a look at the UI in KSP. KSP's stock UI is really solid, but it is from 2011. So if you're looking for something a bit more up to date, you might want to consider installing ZTheme, which redoes the entire UI in a darker and cleaner style, kind of similar to KSP2. There really isn't any performance penalty to getting this mod, so if you think it looks good, no reason not to get it. Next mod I'm going to discuss is actually not a visual mod at all. Rocket Sound Enhancement is, as you might guess, a sound mod. It revamps all the engine sounds and, in my opinion, it makes them sound a lot more powerful with that nice deep rumble. Waterfall adds a lot of sounds already by itself, so if you're happy with those, you don't necessarily need this, but once you get it configured, it can sound really good, so I'd consider getting the upgrade. Alright, so that's pretty much all the standard visual mods for KSP in 2026. It's a fairly long list, and some of you may be wondering if you actually need to install all the mods I've listed here. And to that I'd say it's really depending on what your goals are and how powerful your computer is. If all you have is an old laptop from 1995, you probably don't need these crazy advanced ground scatter mods and clouds and stuff. You might just want to stick to Spectra, Scatterer, Distant Object, Planet Shine, and ZTheme if you like how it looks. Just those will already give you a much better looking game than leaving it stock. On the other hand, if you have a $5,000 supercomputer with an RTX 5090, you can install everything and also render a video in the background and your game would probably run just fine. The other big limiting factor is if you want to build absolutely massive craft that are 300 or 400 plus parts. then you should probably tone it down a bit. Like, I wouldn't get Waterfall, for example. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have for you today. So, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Please rate or comment to this video. Once again, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. And bye!